How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at The New York Ripper. This is from 1982 and was written and directed by Lucio Fulci. Lucio Fulci, a really great Italian horror director. You may know him for The Beyond, but also Zombie 2, a personal favorite of mine. Really do love it, so always glad to see a Fulci movie. This is starring Jack Hedley, Almanta Keller, Paolo, Malco, and Howard Ross. And this is a really good example of what the Giallo genre was. Hyper-violent murder mysteries, bordering on slashers with a good amount of gore in them. I mean, it's not Zombie 2, Fulci's definitely done gorier, but yeah, there's some pretty intense and graphic moments in this one. It's got lots of what Giallo's known for, but yes, this is quite the extreme example and definitely not for the faint of heart, but we do get things like really good camera work, classic Giallo point of view of the killer shots. Those are always great, but this movie also has some dramatic push-ins, which I really do love. Something will happen and then we'll get a sudden zoom into the character's eyes. It's really cool. And some fun little sequences, like one scene, a woman's tied up to a bed and realizes the person next to her might be the killer. So we get like a mini Gerald's game in the middle of this movie. And of course, classic, fun, Giallo, over-the-top music. It's got a lot of good stuff. But yes, as I hinted at earlier, it is one of the more intense examples. In addition to the gore, also sexuality, and that's caused the movie to receive heavy criticism. And to that I say, do you not know what Ripper means? Yeah, sadly, the Ripper's crimes in pop culture kind of get watered down and people think of it like a fun little murder mystery. And no, the Ripper's crimes were quite gruesome. He actually didn't kill as many people as later serial killers would, but it was the manner that caused him to be talked about for so long. They were intense psychosexual crimes, really horrific. And when you're saying, what if there was a Ripper-like character in then modern New York, 80s New York, kind of a grungy and sleazy place? Yeah, that's fitting within the themes of this movie. I mean, know what it is going into it, and also know that obviously the Ripper is an antagonistic force. All movies have those. I mean, you don't have a plot without some sort of antagonist, and one of the biggest differences with horror is horror doesn't shy away from showing you why the antagonistic force is antagonistic. So yeah, know that going into it. This is one of the dirtier movies that Fulci made. Definitely, you can say that. But it still is a really good, fun little Giallo mystery with quite memorable moments, and it really does encapsulate a lot of what Giallo is, and it's a good example of that if you can take extreme moments. I mean, there is a moment in this movie involving sexual assault via a big toe, and it's a super awkward and overly long scene. If you can get through that, you'll be fine for the rest of it. But let's talk a bit about the plot. No major spoilers. I do want to take a moment, analyze some of it, talk about some cool sequences. I don't have to ruin the end to do that, but let's take a moment and do a bit of an analysis. We open up with a killer in New York. You know how I said earlier we have some fun sequences? Right off the bat, we get two. We open up with a man playing fetch with his dog by the river, and one day, rather than returning with the stick, he returns with a severed human hand. And we freeze frame on that and go through the credits. So the opening credits is groovy 80s music with a dog holding a hand in its mouth. And you just have to stare at that as all the names go by. That's great. But then we get like the first on-screen kill of the movie. A woman is in a car in a ferry boat when she's killed, and then the ferry, when they're unloading, says, "Hey, why isn't that car moving?" A truck behind it pushes the car out, and now in the bright light of day, we see the first kill. A pretty good reveal, and leading up to that, a very good, tense sequence with her trying to survive and obviously not. So we open up with some intense moments, and while we're talking about the general setup for this movie, I should mention the killer will have his own sort of a persona. He uses a duck voice when he talks to someone, especially when he's talking to the detective on a phone, and that's kind of one of those things that a lot of people say is kind of silly with this movie, and I kind of go back and forth because it is a little creepy and unnerving because, you know, this guy is obviously evil enough to be killing someone, but then you're going to be speaking with this overly cartoony Donald Duck voice. Yeah, that's kind of unnerving, but at the same time, it's funny to think of Donald Duck as a killer. I don't know. But when he, like, rushes out, you don't know he's there, and then he suddenly stabs someone, and you're berated with this quack, quack, quack right in your face really loud, it's one of those things that I think kind of works, but it's gonna be a little hard to disassociate that and not think it's silly, so it is kind of on the line there. Although, speaking of the Disney characters, Mickey entered the dreaded public domain. He has a horror movie. Pooh already has a horror movie. It's only time till we get a Donald Duck one, so whatever. But outside of the killer, we do have a cast of characters that is going to be going up against him, or might secretly be the killer, you don't know. But we have the two lead detectives. One is an old school detective. He works for the police. He's got his big trench coat. He's kind of gruff. And the other is a college professor who the main detective hires to do a profile on the killer. And he's, you know, the smart, studious professor character. And he's playing with a little game of electronic chess where you have to kind of push down the pieces on an actual board. Cool to see retro technology. But between these two leads, you're going to have old school, you know, street smarts versus book smarts, and I do like how these two kind of play off each other. Really cool to see a kind of double lead in the detective there. But also, one of their biggest leads is a woman survives the killings. You know, she gets stabbed, but she makes it through, and she's actually a student at the university. She's really, really smart, and she knows that the killer might come back for her, she might be a target, but B, she should probably try to figure out the mystery in order to prevent this. So we also have her running around, and outside of them, one of our biggest leads is this woman who is going off on sexual adventures in New York City. She's married, and she's bringing back audio tapes of her adventures back to her husband, so yeah, they kind of have an alternative relationship there, but she's going out and we see that she is really put in a bit of danger going into these things, not knowing what's going to happen, knowing that there's a killer there. Yeah, she's the most in danger out of any of our leads, and she's going to be the point of view as we explore scummy 80s New York, which somehow doesn't look as bad as average modern New York, but that's beside the point. So we get these people running around, and we get to sort of try to solve the mystery. I will say, the mystery is okay. I do prefer puzzle pieces with grand reveals. You know, those are my preferred types of mystery. I like to be able to look at things and piece things together and find like a clever little plot point. But the mystery in here is more about passing blame and suspicion between multiple characters, and the movie does a good job of getting you to think maybe it's this guy, maybe it's gonna be that guy, no, that guy has to be a false lead, I know you're trying to trick me there. So, not the most in-depth thing, but good at shifting around, which I do think is pretty cool. As I said earlier in the review, it goes fairly graphic. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is a pretty good, intense Giallo thrill ride exploring creepy 70s New York, which would be a terrible place to have a modern-day Ripper, and we're gonna have to see who will survive that. Overall, a pretty fun movie. I can definitely recommend it for the right mature audience, but yeah, definitely check it out. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Italian movies playlist where you can see me talk about other stuff. For example, I recently talked about the night Evelyn came out of the grave, and I also did a DVD collection video for Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. So if you want to see more, that's right there. Anyway, have a good day. See you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.